The morning of July 31st dawned grey and wet over the sea. Waves crashed against the rocks below the hut, and inside a boy sat on a dusty floor counting the seconds until midnight. He did not know yet that by the end of this day everything he understood about his life would be torn apart and rebuilt from the ground up. Harry Potter was turning 11 years old. The first knock came at noon, a sound like a boulder hitting the door. The door itself did not survive the greeting. It fell inward, and in the frame stood the largest man Harry had ever seen. Hagrid, the groundskeeper of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, had arrived, and he brought with him a pink umbrella, a slightly squashed birthday cake, and a truth that would change everything. "You are a wizard, Harry." Hours later, they stood in London at the Leaky Cauldron. The next morning, they would enter Diagon Alley through a brick wall that opened like a secret only the worthy could see. And the morning after that, Harry would walk into Gringotts' Wizarding Bank and discover something that had been waiting for him in the darkness beneath London for 10 long years. The marble hall of Gringotts stretched before them like a cathedral built for gold. Goblin tellers sat on high stools behind counters that reached well above Harry's head. Every surface gleamed, every set of eyes watched. Harry had never been anywhere like this in his life, which was not saying much, considering his life so far had consisted of a cupboard under the stairs and the occasional trip to the zoo. Hagrid approached the counter with a letter from Albus Dumbledore. The goblin read it slowly, black eyes moving across the parchment with the deliberate care of a creature who had seen humans try to trick his kind for 1,000 years. "Vault 713, the goblin said. "Follow Griphook." The cart ride was a blur of underground caverns and stalactites, and a waterfall that washed away every enchantment Harry had never known he carried. When they reached the vault, Hagrid retrieved a small package wrapped in brown paper, something that belonged to Dumbledore, something secret, and they began the journey back. That was when it happened. Griphook stopped the cart. "There is something else," the goblin said. His voice was flat and unreadable. "Accounts belonging to the Potter family were not fully settled." Hagrid frowned. "What do you mean, not settled?" "There is a sealed document," Griphook said. "It was filed 10 years ago by James and Lily Potter to be released to their son on his 11th birthday. It was marked as confidential by the Ministry of Magic. The goblins do not answer to the Ministry." Hagrid shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I do not know about that. Maybe we should speak to Professor Dumbledore first." Griphook had already turned and was walking toward another tunnel. The document room was small and square and lit by torches that burned with a greenish flame. A single stone table stood in the centre. On it rested a leather folder sealed with wax. The seal bore the crest of the Potter family, a stag and a lily intertwined. Harry stared at it. His parents had left him something. His parents had known 10 years ago that this day would come. They had planned for it. They had thought about him, even at the end. Hagrid stayed by the door. Harry stepped forward alone. The wax seal cracked under his fingers. Inside the folder were 3 items. The first was a parchment written in his mother's handwriting. The ink was faded but clear. Elegant, careful letters. Lily Potter had written this, knowing she might not live to see her son read it. She'd written it in the middle of a war. The second was a pensieve memory, coiled in a glass vial and shimmering silver in the torchlight. The third was a legal document stamped with the seal of the Wizengamot. The last will and testament of James Fleamont Potter and Lily Jane Potter. Harry's hands shook as he unfolded the parchment. The room was silent except for the distant rush of the underground waterfall. He read the words once, then again, then a third time, because his mind simply could not accept what his eyes were telling him. In the event of our deaths, custody of our son Harry James Potter is to be transferred to Severus Tobias Snape, who has sworn an unbreakable vow to protect the child with his life. Severus Snape. The name meant nothing to Harry, but the man it belonged to was apparently the person his parents had trusted more than anyone else in the world, including Albus Dumbledore. Harry reached for the letter in his mother's hand. "My dearest Harry," it began, "if you are reading this, then James and I are gone, and you have turned 11 years old. I am so sorry. I am sorry that I cannot be there to see the person you have become. I am sorry that you had to grow up without us. And I am sorry for what I am about to tell you, because I know it will be difficult to understand. There is a man named Severus Snape. He and I grew up together in the same town. He was my first friend in the world of magic before I even knew I was a witch. He told me about Hogwarts. He showed me that the strange things I could do were not strange at all. They were magic, and they were beautiful. We grew apart. He made terrible choices. He was drawn into darkness, and I could not follow him there. I will not make excuses for what he became, but I will tell you this, and I need you to believe it, because it is the truest thing I know. Severus Snape loved me, not as a possession, not as a prize. He loved me enough to turn against the most dangerous dark wizard the world has ever seen. He loved me enough to risk his life every single day to spy on Voldemort for Dumbledore. He loved me enough to stand in this very room 1 week before we went into hiding and swear an unbreakable vow to protect you. If he had broken that vow, he would have died on the spot. He did not break it. Harry lowered the letter. His chest was tight, his eyes burned. He did not know this man. He had never heard his name before today. But his mother had written these words from beyond the grave to tell him one thing, that somewhere out there was a person who had sworn his very life to keeping Harry safe. And Harry had spent 10 years in a cupboard under the stairs. The pensieve memory was waiting. Harry had never seen one before. Griphook brought a stone basin filled with a liquid that was neither water nor light, something in between, something that moved with a current that had no source. Harry tipped the vial and watched the silver thread dissolve into the basin. Then, because he had come this far and there was nothing left to be afraid of, he leaned forward and fell. The memory opened on the same room he was standing in, but it was different now, warmer, brighter, alive. James Potter stood by the stone table with his arms crossed. His hair was as messy as Harry's, his glasses were the same shape. He looked tired and afraid and fiercely determined all at once. Lily sat in a chair beside him, one hand resting on her belly, on Harry, unborn, still safe inside her. Her face was pale, her eyes were red. She had been crying. And across the table stood Severus Snape. He was younger, but his face was already lined with something that looked like grief. His black robes hung from a frame that seemed too thin. His hands were clenched at his sides. He did not look at James. He looked only at Lily. "You told me you had information," Snape said, "about the prophecy." "Dumbledore tells us the war is lost "If the Dark Lord finds the child," James said. His voice was steady, but Harry could hear the tremor underneath. "We are going into hiding. Fidelius charm, secret keeper. The full set." Snape said nothing. "But before we go," Lily said, "there is something we need to ask you, and you are going to hate it." "I already hate it," Snape said quietly. James stepped forward and placed a document on the table. The last will and testament. Snape looked at it. His face did not change, but his hands unclenched. "If we die," Lily said, "we want you to raise our son." The silence lasted 3 full seconds. When Snape spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious," Lily said. "James and I have discussed it. Sirius is too reckless. Remus is a werewolf, and the Ministry will never allow it. Peter is not strong enough. Dumbledore would place him with my sister, and I would rather my son be raised by the giant squid in the Black Lake than by Petunia." Snape did not respond. His black eyes were fixed on the document. "I know what you did," Lily said, her voice softened. "I know you went to Dumbledore. I know you begged him to hide us. I know you turned against Voldemort, and I know why, Lily. I know you loved me." He flinched. "And I know that love did not stop when I married James. It did not stop when Harry was conceived. It did not stop when the Dark Lord marked us for death. It is the one thing in this world that I am absolutely certain of. You have loved me since we were children, and if I die, I need to know that love will carry forward to my son." Snape closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "He is James Potter's son," he said. "He is my son," Lily said, "and you are the only person I trust to raise him as I would." Another silence. Longer this time. And then Severus Snape drew his wand and placed the tip against James Potter's outstretched hand. James did the same. Lily rose and placed her hand over both of theirs. "The vow," Snape said, and his voice broke on the word. "I, Severus Tobias Snape, swear upon my life and magic to protect Harry James Potter from all harm, to raise him as my own, and to never abandon him so long as I draw breath. Should I fail in this vow, may my life be forfeit, and my magic stripped from me forever." The magic flared gold around their joined hands, a light so bright that Harry had to look away. When it faded, Snape was trembling. Lily crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, Severus." The memory dissolved. Harry stood in the torchlit room with tears streaming down his face and a document clutched in his hands that named a complete stranger as his guardian, a man who had sworn to die for him 10 years before Harry even knew magic existed. A man who apparently had no idea where Harry had been all this time. Hagrid was still waiting at the door, looking deeply uncomfortable. Harry did not speak to him. He folded the documents, tucked them inside his jacket, and walked out of the room with a new weight in his chest. Not grief, exactly, and not anger, though there was anger there too. It was purpose. Someone had made a choice 10 years ago that Harry would not be raised by Severus Snape. Someone had overruled his parents' final wishes. Someone had placed him with the Dursleys instead, with people who locked him in a cupboard and called him a burden, and made him believe for the first 11 years of his life that he was unwanted by the entire world. Harry intended to find out who. 2 weeks later, Harry Potter arrived at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He had not told anyone what he found in the Gringotts vault, not Hagrid, not Dumbledore, not the students who shared his boat across the lake. The documents were hidden at the bottom of his trunk, beneath his robes and his cauldron and his brand-new copy of Quidditch Through the Ages. He carried the secret with him like a stone in his pocket, heavy, constant, unignorable. The Sorting Hat placed him in Gryffindor. Harry barely noticed. His eyes were scanning the staff table, searching for black robes and a hooked nose and eyes that his mother had once described, in a letter from beyond the grave, as the most honest she had ever known. He found him. Severus Snape sat at the end of the table, silent and still. He was watching Harry with an expression that Harry could not read, but it was not hatred. Harry had seen hatred. He had lived with it for 10 years on Privet Drive. He knew what it looked like. This was something else, something guarded, something held back at tremendous cost. Harry looked back at him, and for 1 second, just one, Snape's expression flickered. His eyes moved to the scar on Harry's forehead, then down to the table, then away. He knows, Harry thought. He knows exactly who I am, and he knows what he swore to do. The feast began. Food appeared on golden plates. Harry filled his plate and ate without tasting anything. Across the hall, Severus Snape did the same. The confrontation happened on the 3rd day of term. Harry had memorized the path to the potions classroom. He went after dinner, alone, when the dungeons were cold and empty, and the torches burned low in their brackets. The door to the classroom was open. Snape was inside, standing at his desk, reading a scroll by wandlight. He did not look up when Harry entered. "Potter," he said, "it is after hours." "I know," Harry said. The silence stretched. Snape put down the scroll. "If you have come to ask for special treatment because of your name, let me be very clear. I found my parents' will." Snape stopped moving. Completely. He did not blink, he did not breathe. "At Gringotts," Harry said, "on my birthday. They left it for me. They left a letter from my mother and a pensieve memory and the will. I read it. I watched the memory. I saw you." The torchlight flickered. Neither of them moved. "I saw you swear the vow," Harry said. "I saw her thank you. And I need to know something." Snape's voice, when he finally spoke, was hoarse. "What?" Harry stepped closer. The stone floor was cold under his shoes. Outside, somewhere in the castle, a ghost laughed. In here, there was only the sound of 2 people breathing. "Where were you?" Harry said. "For 11 years. Where were you?" Snape closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were not the eyes of a man who hated Harry Potter. They were the eyes of a man who had failed the only person he ever loved, and had been looking at the proof of that failure every single day since Lily Evans died. "I was told you were safe," he said. "Dumbledore assured me. He said you were with your mother's family, protected. The Blood Wards would hold as long as you called that place home." "I called a cupboard home," Harry said. "A cupboard under the stairs. I did not know my own name until I was 6. I thought my parents died in a car crash. I thought I was nothing and no one, and unwanted by everyone who had ever known me." Snape's hand was gripping the edge of his desk now, knuckles white. His jaw was tight, his black eyes glittered. "I did not know," he said. "You should have checked." The words hit like a curse. Snape flinched. He did not argue. He did not offer excuses. He simply stood there, A man who had spent 11 years believing he had kept his vow, only to discover that every single day of those 11 years had been a lie. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. I swore on my life to protect you, and I failed. I can offer no defense. I can make no excuse. You have every right to hate me. Harry pulled the letter from his mother's from inside his robes. He had carried it with him every day since Gringotts. He unfolded it and held it out. She did not hate you, he said quietly. She trusted you. She chose you over Dumbledore, over Sirius Black, over her own sister. You were the only one she trusted. Snape took the letter. His hands were shaking. He read it once in silence, and then again. When he reached the end, the part about love carrying forward from Lily to her son, he pressed one hand against his mouth and did not move for a very long time. That night changed everything. Snape did not suddenly become warm or kind. He was still sharp and cold and difficult. He still took points from Gryffindor with more enthusiasm than was strictly necessary. He still sneered at Neville Longbottom and ignored Hermione Granger's raised hand. Some habits were too deeply ingrained to undo in a single conversation, but something shifted beneath the surface. Harry started eating breakfast in the great hall and catching Snape's eye across the staff table. It was nothing dramatic, just a brief look, a small nod, an acknowledgement that passed between them like a secret handshake. They were connected now. Bound by a vow that had been sworn before Harry could walk, and by a truth that had been buried for 11 years. And when Quirrell's troll was let into the dungeons on Halloween night, it was Snape who arrived first. Not McGonagall, not Dumbledore. Snape, who had been watching Harry's movements since the day term began, who had been following the thread of danger that seemed to gather around the boy who lived, like iron filings to a magnet. When Harry's broom was jinxed during the Quidditch match, it was Snape who muttered the counter-curse, not Quirrell, as Hermione had assumed, but Snape, whose eyes never left Harry for a single second of the game. He had made a vow, after all, and whatever else Severus Snape was, he was a man who kept his word. The third-floor corridor became a different story. Harry did not investigate alone. He went to Snape first, not because he trusted him completely, not yet, but because he remembered what his mother had written. "You are the only person I trust." And Harry had decided, somewhere between the Gringotts vault and the third week of term, that he would trust his mother's judgment, even if he did not yet trust the man himself. Snape did not stop him from going after the stone. He knew better than to try. Instead, he went with him, through the trapdoor, past Fluffy, through the devil's snare and the flying keys and the chessboard that cost Ron Weasley 3 broken ribs and a concussion. When they reached the final chamber, Snape stepped forward first and faced Quirrell alone. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Quirrell, or rather the thing behind Quirrell's turban, did not expect to see Severus Snape standing between the stone and Harry Potter with his wand raised and his face set in an expression of absolute, unshakable resolve. "You swore to protect him," Voldemort's voice hissed from the back of Quirrell's skull. How touching, how utterly pathetic. "I swore an unbreakable vow to a woman I loved," Snape said. "And I have spent 11 years failing to honour it. I will not fail again." The battle lasted less than a minute. When Dumbledore arrived, Snape was standing over Quirrell's unconscious body. Harry was behind him, untouched, still holding the Philosopher's Stone. And for the first time since Lily Potter died, something in Snape's face looked almost like peace. Harry spent the summer after his first year not at Privet Drive, but at Spinner's End, A cramped house in a grey industrial town filled with books and potion ingredients and the lingering smell of old grief. It was not Hogwarts. It was not warm or welcoming, but it was his guardian's house, and that made it home in a way that Dursley's house had never been. Snape did not know how to be a father. He had never expected to be one. He had taken the vow expecting to die before it mattered, because that was what spies did. They died, and their promises died with them. He had not planned for survival. He had not planned for Harry to be real, to be living and breathing and asking difficult questions over breakfast about why the toast was burnt and whether they could visit Diagon Alley on Saturday. But he tried. It was awkward and uncomfortable, and full of silences that neither of them knew how to fill. Snape answered personal questions with long pauses and shorter answers. He did not say, "I care about you," or "I am glad you are here," but he woke Harry from nightmares without being asked. He brewed dreamless sleep potion by the cauldron and left it on the bedside table without a word. He taught Harry to duel in the cramped living room, clearing aside the furniture with a flick of his wand and drilling him on defensive spells until Harry's arm ached. And on the last night of summer, as they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, Snape spoke. "Your mother would be proud of you," he said. It was the first time he had said it aloud. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. Harry heard everything that was behind those 6 words. The 11 years of guilt, the love that had never faded, the vow that had finally been kept. Harry did not say thank you. He did not need to either. He just nodded and finished his tea. And the next morning they went to King's Cross Station together, a boy and his guardian, walking through the barrier between worlds, carrying more between them than words could ever hold.